1.
Take a moment
The
to be
beehive,
still.
the bigger,
Let
the
your
better.
shoulders fall
Let's kick things
gently.
off with the
Let
queen
your
of all
jaw
vintage
soften,
hairdos,
and let
the
the quiet
beehive.
settle in
Back in
around
the
you
early
like
60s,
a blanket.
if your hair
You're
didn't add
safe
3
here.
inches to your
You're
height,
warm,
were you
and
even
all
trying?
around you,
Women
the
would spend
world
hours
slows
teasing their
down.
hair and
There's a
shellacking
low
it with
wind
enough
outside,
hairspray to survive
maybe
a windstorm.
a soft
It was
breeze
elegant,
brushing
dramatic,
the walls
and a
like
little
the
over the
hem
top,
of an old
in
cloak.
the best way.
Nothing urgent.
By the late 70s,
just a
though,
night.
softer styles
Breathing
took over,
easy
and the beehive started
and
to
calm.
fade.
Take a
But we
deep
still
breath
remember it
and
like
let
it
it out
was
slowly.
yesterday.
Let's
2.
go somewhere together
No
now.
elbows on the table.
Somewhere old
Manners first,
and steady.
always.
And
You
full
know
of
the look,
stories
that
held
look,
deep in its
when your
bones.
elbows
Our
hit the dinner
story
table.
tonight begins.
It was an unspoken rule,
High on
passed
a cliff
down
edge,
like a family
where
recipe.
The sea below is more
Elbows meant you were
sound than
slouching,
shape. It's
and
late
slouching
evening,
meant you
and
weren't
the
showing
stars
respect.
are starting to wake.
Today,
not all
most
at once,
people wouldn't
but
bat
in
an
ones
eye.
and twos.
But back then,
like candles
one
lit down
elbow
a
too
long
many,
corridor,
and you were sitting
perched
up
at the
straight real
cliff's edge
fast.
as a stone castle,
3.
ancient
The bowl
and
cut,
gray,
the
but
one
not
mom could
cold,
do at
not
home.
harsh.
If you were a
This
kid in
castle
the 80s
feels
or
lived
early
in.
90s,
Familiar,
chances are your mom gave
like
you
it
one of
knows your
these.
footsteps
Just
before
plop
you
a
take
bowl on
them.
your head,
Some say
snip around it,
in the
and
old
boom,
days,
you were
people
good to go.
believed
It was
buildings
cheap,
had
quick,
souls,
and hey,
that
it
castles
kept the
had
hair
breath
out of your
and
eyes.
bones
It
and
wasn't
moods.
exactly
The
stylish,
rafters
but it
above,
sure was everywhere.
wooden ribs,
These days,
the hearth,
the bowl cut's
a
more of a
glowing heart,
punchline.
and the
But
wind
for a while, it was
moving
just
through
what
it
kids
all,
wore.
like a
4.
gentle sigh.
Clean your
This
plate.
castle, this
No
one
leftovers
right here.
allowed.
It's
Finish
breathing
your
tonight,
food.
softly,
There are starving
slowly.
kids somewhere.
And if you
That
listen
line
closely,
echoed through kitchens for
you might
decades,
just
and
hear
it stuck.
Inside,
The rule wasn't
the
really
halls are
about
hushed.
guilt, though.
The tapestries
It came from a
barely
time when
move.
food was
But
precious,
there's a whisper
and
in
wasting
the
it
velvet
just
silence,
wasn't an option.
a flicker in the
Today, we
candlelight.
talk more about
Every
listening to our
footstep on the worn
bodies
stone
or saving
feels like
leftovers.
it's part of a memory.
But that old,
the air
clean your
smells
plate
of old
mentality,
wood,
it's hard
beeswax
to forget.
polish, and a
5.
hint of time
Feathered
from
hair,
a dried bunch
the Farrah flip
hanging in the
everyone
kitchen
wanted.
corridor.
If
And
you had
somewhere
hair in the late
deeper
70s,
inside,
you
a
probably tried
fireplace
feathering it
glows.
at least
It
once.
crackles gently,
Blow it back,
each pop
curl it
and
out.
hiss,
It was
as
soft,
natural as the
full,
heartbeat
and
of this
effortlessly
place.
cool.
The castle
Farrah
walls
Fawcett
are thick,
made it famous,
and they hold
but
in the
teens
warmth
across
like a
America
secret.
were chasing that
Outside,
perfect flip.
the sea
Guys
wind
had it,
moans
girls had
along
it,
the stone.
even yearbook photos
but
weren't
inside,
safe.
Inside,
Eventually,
there's only
the
quiet
trend fizzled
comfort.
out in favor
A
of
steward
flatter,
walks the
sleeker
hall.
styles.
He's an
But
old
the
man
feathered
now,
look,
not frail,
pure retro
but
magic.
seasoned.
6.
Every
Asked to be
wrinkle on his
excused.
face tells a
Dinner
story.
time
He's
wasn't
not in a
over
rush to
till
tell.
you said so.
His name is
You
Tom.
didn't just get up
and
from
tonight,
the table.
like every
You
night,
asked,
he walked the
"May I be
corridor
excused?"
slowly. Not
Wasn't
because
just polite,
he must,
it was expected.
but because
It taught you
he's
that
part
dinner
of the
was
castle,
about more than
too.
just eating.
He checks
It was
the
about
shutters,
family time,
listens
being
for
present,
drafts,
and
he
knowing when
runs his
something
fingers
was bigger
along
than
the
you.
old wooden beams.
No.
Like
Kids
one
might
pet
grab a
dog,
bite and be
a
back on their
quiet
tablets
affection,
before you
a
finished
nod
saying
of
grace.
thanks.
7.
He hums.
The mullet,
Sometimes
business in the
tunes
front,
with no words,
party in the back.
melodies
Ah,
passed
yes,
down
the
from
mullet.
stewards before.
It's hard to talk
Little
about hair
lullabies
history
for
without
stone
mentioning
and
this
shadow.
glorious
Tom
contradiction.
believes what his
Short
grandmother
and neat
told
in the
him
front,
long ago.
long and
that
wild
if you
in the
speak
back.
kindly to
It
a
was
place,
a whole personality.
it'll keep you safe.
In the 80s,
and so he
it
does.
was everywhere.
The
On
bedchamber
athletes,
by
rock
the tower,
stars,
up the
even your
spiral
Uncle
stairs,
Randy.
the kind
We
that
joked
curve
about it
tighter
later,
as you
sure.
go.
But
is
when
a
it was
bedchamber
in,
wrapped in
it
moonlight.
was in.
Its
And
window
who
is a
knows?
slit in the wall.
It's had a few
just
surprise
enough for the
comebacks
stars
lately.
to peek through.
8.
The bed is simple.
No phones at the
Wool
table.
blankets
Just
folded
you,
neatly.
me,
a single
and dinner.
candle flickers
Before
on the
phones
bedside
got
table,
smart,
casting
dinner time
soft
was
shapes
sacred.
that stretch,
The house phone
sway,
didn't ring.
and settle.
The TV
You could
stayed
lie
off.
here
You
if you
sat.
liked.
You
The sheets
talked.
would be
You
cool at
passed the
first,
rolls.
but then warm
Now,
like
it's
they
more
remember
common
every
to see
dream that's
everyone
ever been
scrolling
dreamt
through
here.
screens
You'd
than
hear
making eye
nothing
contact.
except
But back
the
then,
breath
that
of
half
the
hour at the
castle,
table was when
and
the
maybe
world
a
slowed
bird
down.
rustling in the
9.
eave, and you'd feel
The
safe.
afro, big,
Held like
bold,
the walls
and
around
beautiful.
you knew your name
In the 60s
long
and
before
70s,
you ever spoke
the
it
afro
aloud.
wasn't just a hairstyle.
Down in the kitchens,
it was a statement.
the ovens are resting
Wearing your
now.
natural hair
no
was
clatter,
about pride,
no
identity,
boiling pots,
and saying,
just
"This
a
is
faint
who I
scent
am."
of yesterday's bread
It was
in
bold,
the hush of clay
beautiful,
jars
and
cooling on
powerful,
wooden shelves.
and it
a cat
inspired
naps on the
generations.
hearthstone.
Over
one ear
time,
twitching
other
now and
styles
then,
came and went,
but otherwise,
but the afro's legacy
perfectly at
never
peace.
left.
The
10.
walls in here
Don't talk with
are
your
thicker
mouth full.
still.
Table
Their
talk
silence
could
feels
wait.
deeper.
It didn't
And
matter
some
how
say,
exciting your
if
story
you sit
was.
by the back
If your
door,
mouth was full,
near the
you
pantry
waited.
wall,
Talking
you
while
can hear the
chewing was a
castle
big
murmur
no-no,
to itself,
and parents made sure
not
you
in
knew
words,
it. It
but
was
in
about
creaks
manners,
and groans
sure,
and sighs,
but it also taught
like a
patience.
song
To finish
it's
what you were
sung for
doing
hundreds
before
of
starting
years
something else.
that no one
Today,
quite remembers,
that rule's more relaxed,
but everyone
but
somehow
in some
knows.
homes, it
And
still
now,
sticks.
as the night drifts on and stars trace paths across the sky, the castle curls inward like a sleeping cat. Its fires dim, its hallways still. Even the wind outside slows to a soft hush. You can rest here. Truly rest. Breathe in deeply and out slowly. Let your breath match the castle's. Steady and calm, we'll stay a while longer in this quiet place. Let the old stones keep watch. Let the rafters hold your dreams. The stars above are clearer. The kind of stars you only see when the world is quiet, when even the trees are still, and the only light is firelight. They stretch out across the black sky in soft arcs, twinkling like frost on a window pane. From the tallest tower, the wind wraps around the battlements, curling between stone merlons, like a cat weaving through legs, not howling, more like murmuring, a lullaby in a forgotten tongue. A chambermaid steps elsewhere in the castle. Soft footsteps patter across the flagstones, bare feet tucked into thick woolen socks. Her name is Elsa. She's young, perhaps 17, with arms that remember the weight of firewood and fingers that carry the scent of lavender from the linen she folds. Tonight, like every night, she checks the bed, making sure the warming pans were properly run across the sheets, checking that shutters are latched and candles snuffed to gentle glows. She doesn't speak much. Not to the other servants, but sometimes she speaks to the castle. A quiet good night, old bones, as she passes the northern wall. A whispered sleep tight to the buttery where the wine breathes in its barrels. She believes, too, that the castle hears, not with ears, but with presence, with memory. The nursery room in one small turret. Up a narrow stair hardly wider than a barrel. There's a room where the nursery used to be. Now, it's just quiet. A rocking chair leans near the window, not moving, but poised as if it just stopped rocking a moment ago. A single toy remains, a carved wooden sheep, worn smooth from years of little hands. And though no child sleeps there now, the room is warm. The hearth has long since gone to embers, but the warmth lingers, like kindness, like a lullaby that echoes long after the voice is gone. They say that when the snow falls heavy in midwinter, you can sometimes hear a lullaby hum from this turret. No words, just a low tune of something long remembered. Some say it's the wind, others just smile and say it's the castle, cradling old dreams. The guards loft farther down the eastern wing, where the stones are colder and the torches fewer. A guardsman leans against a wall. His name is Alder. He's not really guarding tonight, not in the way a guard might in times of war. No, tonight, he's simply watching, listening. He can hear the castle breathe, a groan of timber overhead, a shiver through the floor stone, the sound of an owl passing above, wings silent as silk. Alder closes his eyes. He doesn't fear sleep here. Not in this castle. He lets the warmth from the wall seep into his back and breathes in the mingled scents of lichen, pine smoke, and stone dust. Even his armor, laid beside him, seems to sigh. He wondered, does the castle remember every soldier who's ever leaned here? Does it remember their dreams? A soft breath in, a longer breath out. Sleep comes for Alder, not as a thief, but as an old friend with a wool blanket and no questions. The Hall of Memory, beneath the main wing. There's a chamber with no name. The servants call it the Hall of Memory, though no plaque marks it. It's a simple space, stone floor, a few low benches, and a single window that looks out over the sea. Old scrolls once lived here, but they've been moved to the scriptorium now, and this place is something else. It's not quite empty, not quite forgotten. It hums, not with sound exactly, but with presence, a kind of stillness that makes you hold your breath when you step inside. Not out of fear, but reverent. Elsbeth passes the doorway as she always does. She doesn't go in, but she does pause for just a moment to listen, to let the quiet fill her ears. And then she walks on, bare feet padding over smooth stone, carrying the hush of the hall with her. The castle dreams, yes, the castle dreams, too. At least, that's what the old steward Tom says. He claims you can feel it. On nights when the wind doesn't howl, but whispers. When the candles flicker in rhythm, and the floors sigh under no footsteps at all. The castle dreams of all it has known. A banquet once held in joy. A love letter read aloud beneath the stairs. A tear dropped on a windowsill by someone long gone. And the castle keeps these moments like pressed flowers between pages, like old lullabies, hummed to oneself. Not loud, not demanding, just there, always there. And you're here, too, in this castle of breath and stone and memory. Maybe you're a guest, tucked warmly into a high tower bed, or a wandering soul, wrapped in wool, curled beside the hearth, or perhaps just someone listening, breathing slowly, drifting gently, letting the castle's breath become your own, soft and steady, like waves below, like wind in the rafters, like sleep itself. Take another slow breath and let it out. You're safe, you're warm, and the castle is watching over you. Always. A hearth still burning down in the great hall, where shadows stretch tall along the stone walls. A fire still burns low in the hearth. Its glow washes the flagstones in soft amber, flickering like slow heartbeats. The flames don't crackle loudly anymore. They whisper. A gentle hiss here, a sleepy pop there. You might imagine the fire is speaking to the wood, thanking it for its warmth, for its slow surrender to ash. Above the mantel hangs a great tapestry. Its threads have faded, its edges worn, but the story it holds remains knights riding beneath stars, a queen with a crown of silver leaves, and a bard beneath a yew tree, singing a song that no one remembers the words to, but somehow you know the melody. It's a story without urgency, without fear, just peace, and the comfort of warmth in the belly of stone. The breath in the walls of the castle are thick, built not only to defend, but to hold in warmth. In the 13th century, they lined the insides of the coldest chambers with tapestries, woven with wool and silk, stitched in silence by hands that moved with rhythm and care. These weren't just decoration, they were insulation, layers of soft fabric whispering against ancient stone, holding heat close like a shawl, pulled over shoulders. Even now, they rustle ever so slightly, though no window is open. Some say it's drafts, but others believe it's breath. The castle's breath, moving through its lungs of halls and chambers, humming through the walls as it exhales slowly into the night. The threads sway, not in fear, but in reverence. The winter garden there is a small garden tucked within the inner bailey. It's surrounded by high walls, open to the sky, and lit by moonlight so bright tonight, it almost feels like dawn. Snow lies undisturbed across the stones, except tiny paw prints. A fox maybe, or perhaps the castle cat. A gray thing with eyes like moss and fur like soot. She weaves through the leafless hedges, pauses by the stone bench, and then curls herself in the hollow of an old barrel where herbs once dried. Even now, lavender lingers in the wood. She yawns, settles, and dreams with the garden. Dreams of warmer days, of bees buzzing low, of rosemary and thyme, swaying under sun. The breath of the castle reaches even here, out through arched corridors, along mossy stones, curling gently around slumbering roots. The kitchen quiet in the kitchens. The great fires have long gone out, but the scent of baked bread still lingers. There are loaves cooling on the stone shelf, wrapped in cloth, a few soft crumbs on the counter, a basin of water still warm from the wash. Here the walls hum differently, not with the hush of high towers or distant halls, but with the memory of laughter, of spoons against copper, of stories shared over stews and honeycakes. This is the heart, where people fed each other, and fed stories too. Some castles even believed that kitchens held a soul. The oldest tile in the hearth, said to be the heart, never moved, because it carried the memory of every flame that had ever danced there. Tonight, that tile hums gently, its warmth not fire-born, but woven from time itself. And beside it, a mug of milk, still steaming, left out perhaps for a late visitor, or the castle spirit itself. The tower that watches the sea at the edge of the western wall, rising highest of all, is the sea tower. Its windows are narrow slits, but one has been widened by time, or perhaps affection. The wind through this window doesn't shriek. It sings, low and steady, like the lull of waves crashing against distant rocks, repeating themselves like a prayer older than language. This is where the steward comes sometimes, wrapped in his long coat, his gray hair tucked into a wool cap. He brings a stool, just sits, listens. He says the sea speaks to the castle, that the castle listens in return, that they've always been companions, stone and water, breath and tide. He watches the horizon until stars fade, and sometimes, just before he rises to return below, he hums a melody. His grandmother used to sing an old song about a girl who turned into a gull and watched over ships from above. The steward believes the gull still visits the tower, perched high on the stone ledge, keeping company with the castle. And the castle, in turn, breathes a soft breath of salt and memory out to sea. You again still here. Yes, you are. Your body might be sinking deeper into the blankets now. Your eyelids heavier. Your breath slower. The castle breathes with you. The same rhythm. Soft. Safe. Surrounded. Take one more breath in. And let it go. The wind outside will keep moving. And the castle will keep watching. You don't have to do anything. Just be here. In the breath of stone. The hush of the rafters. The glow of ancient firelight. Sleep is already near, and the castle holds you like it holds its stories. Gently, forever. A corridor of echoes. There's a hallway, just off the southern wing, lined with archways that no longer lead to rooms, just alcoves, quiet little spaces where time curled up and went to sleep. Some say these were the monk cells, used long ago when the castle served as a place of retreat. Others say they were once storerooms, holding parchment and wax and salted fish. But now they hold only echoes, the kind that don't stop. They don't bounce off walls or ring out like shouts. These echoes hum low. They settle into your bones. They remind you of a time you can't quite remember. A candlelit evening, a voice humming softly, the sound of your own heartbeat in a quiet room. In medieval times, it was believed that every corridor had a memory, that stones could store words, especially those spoken in grief, or love, or prayer. They called it the stone song. Walk slow enough through this hall, and you just might hear it. A breath, a sigh, a word said not for you, but somehow meant for you all the same. The bedchamber of woven dreams at the top of a narrow stair, twisting clockwise like a snail's shell, sits the solar, the private bed. The fire here is gentle. It's been tended carefully. Logs stacked just so, embers glowing with patient warmth. Thick curtains hang from a canopy bed. Wool blankets layered beneath quilts, all hand-stitched, each one telling a different story. A fox curled in a thicket, a falcon mid-flight, a lily opening under stars. The walls here are padded not just by tapestries, but by silence, a kind of hush that feels sacred, like the room is holding its breath, just for you. Above the hearth, a small shelf holds a few wooden carvings, a deer, a moon, a cradle. Someone placed them there long ago, and though they're simple, they speak loudly of care, of someone taking time to smooth edge, to shape comfort out of nothing but pine and patience. Close your eyes here, and you might hear the hush of fingers brushing linen, the distant hoot of an owl, the castle breathing slowly through its rafters. This room was built for rest, and it remembers how the candlekeeper's loft. Few knew of this room, high in the eastern turret, accessible only by a trapdoor ladder, lived the candle, a woman with calloused palms, a quiet smile, and hands that always smelled faintly of beeswax. She was not a servant, not quite a noble either. She was something else, a keeper of light. Every evening she would walk the castle with a bundle of tapers in her apron, snuffing out the used ones, replacing them, watching the way shadows danced along the hallways when the flame first took. There's something old-world magic about her task. In medieval castles, candles weren't just for sight. They were for time. You measured your hours in inches of wax, in pools of melted silence, in flickering halos that told you how far you were from dawn. Her loft is still there, tiny, warm, filled with rows of molds and wax blocks, linen wicks hanging like soft threads of starlight. She may be long gone, but her last candle still sits on the windowsill, unlit, waiting, just in case someone or something still needs the light. The whisper chapel, tucked into the very belly of the keep, beneath the main chapel, lies a space few visit now, a stone chamber, no bigger than a cottage kitchen, with a single pew and a single lantern in walls, that curved just enough to catch every whisper and hold it still. This was the whisper chapel, meant for prayer, or confession, or weeping alone. Its walls are not heavy. They are listening. There's a hush here that goes deeper than silence, like velvet pressed against your chest, like breath held for someone else. In some traditions, it was believed that prayers spoken in this space rose slower because they were being cradled, carried. Monks would sit here through cold nights, not asking, not speaking, just listening to the walls, to the silence, to the breath of the castle moving like a tide through stone veins. You can still hear it now. If you sit still enough, a faint sound, like someone speaking into the hollow of their own hand, or wind curling beneath an old wooden door. It is not lonely. It is love, wrapped in quiet. The stair that goes nowhere, somewhere between the kitchens and the granary. There's a staircase. It doesn't lead up or down. It just ends. 6 steps, all of them worn by feet. Long gone. No doorway, no arch. Just stone wall at the top. Strange, yes, but not unusual. In many medieval keeps, stairs were built and then changed, rerouted, sealed off when plans shifted, or halls were lost to time. Yet, some say this stair still goes somewhere. That, at certain hours, perhaps between night and dawn. If you place your foot on the first step and breathe slowly, each stair will feel warmer, as if it remembers what it once was meant to be. And sometimes, they say, those who pause at the top with eyes closed will feel wind on their cheek. No drafts, no windows, just wind, as if the breath of the castle is rising up through the stones, guiding you somewhere. Memory cannot follow, but sleep can. Take a moment now. Let your shoulders relax. Let your jaw soften. Let your breath fall into rhythm with the castle. It is with you, breathing, holding, cradling you in stories that don't rush. You are safe, and sleep is near. The sound of bread rising in a little anteroom beside the kitchens, where warm brick walls hold the scent of flour and wood smoke. There sits a long table, dusted white each morning, cleaned with slow strokes of linen cloth each night. This is where the bread begins. And even now, when the ovens have cooled and the copper kettles have been scrubbed and hung, you can almost hear it, the soft bubbling of dough rising in silence, slow as snowfall. The castle's bakers once rose long before the others. In the dark of winter, when breath clouded in the air like fog, they worked by candlelight, their fingers pressing and folding dough in practiced, reverent rhythm. It was said that to knead bread was to bless it, to pass warmth from hand to hand, life to loaf. And when the bread baked, golden and puffed and split along the top, its scent would waft upward through every floor, clinging to stone, drifting through the corridors like memory. There are still places in the castle where that scent lingers, like someone's comfort left behind. A window that watches high in the western wall of the castle's library. There's a round stained glass window, a mosaic of soft blues and pale golds, crafted by a hand unknown. It depicts a sleeping knight beneath a tree. His sword is sheathed, his helm rests on the ground, and above him the branches curve gently, sheltering rather than looming. The window is always cold to the touch, and when the light of dusk passes through it, it throws a pool of color onto the floor. Not bright, not showy, but soft, The kind of light that fills the space, like a yawn, like an arm wrapping loosely around your shoulder. Some believed that this window was enchanted, that it did not show just a night at rest, but a vision of blessing, a reminder to those who pass beneath it, that even the bravest are allowed to rest. Even warriors sleep. Even castles close their eyes. Let that light fall on your chest now and feel its warmth. In your breath, the hall of names, past the dining hall. Behind a heavy door with iron hinges is a room with no windows, just walls. And those walls are covered in names, not etched, not carved, but stitched in rows and rows of old linen, hung like scrolls, each thread a different shade of earth or sky. These were the names of those who once served, not just lords, but cooks, maids, messengers, stable hands, wet nurses, bell ringers, grain counters, stairs, each name embroidered carefully, letter by letter, by the hand of the needle. She sat here every evening after the lamps were lit, her fingers nimble, her breath a whisper in the quiet. The embroidery wasn't grand, just names, but in each stitch there was care, recognition, remembrance. In a time when few records were kept for those who served, this was a way of saying, I see you. You were here, and still are. The bell rope and a swallow at the rear of the chapel. A long rope hangs from a small square hole in the ceiling. Its fibers are rough, worn by countless hands, frayed in the way old things often are, stronger than they look. This was the bell rope. At dawn and dusk, it was pulled twice, calling the castle to waking or rest. The bell itself is small, no more than a foot wide, cast in tin and iron. Not grand, not showy, but true. There's a story, whispered more than written. That one spring, a swallow built a nest beside the bell's inner rim, and though it flew each time the bell rang, it always returned. Some say it stayed 4 seasons, that its descendants still circle the steeple. In medieval lore, swallows were symbols of safe return, of souls carried home, of journeys made and unmade. When the bell rings in memory, its sound is soft, like wings brushing your collar. You don't hear it with your ears. You feel it in your chest. Where the stories settle, the warm wall. Not all warmth comes from fire. In the southeastern guest chamber, a room small enough to feel like a nest, there's a wall that radiates a quiet heat, even on the coldest nights. It's part of a hypercaust system, a Roman design, rare in most medieval castles, where hot air was channeled beneath the floor and into the walls, heated by a fire tended below. Not many would notice it now. It looks like stone, feels like stone, but press your palm to it in winter, and you'll feel the breath of flame, not harsh, not burning, just present. It's the kind of warmth that lulls you backward, that wraps itself around your shoulders and says, you've done enough today. Imagine leaning your back against that stone, feeling the heat seep into your spine, into your limbs, into your dreams. The castle breathes on. Its breath, not loud, but steady, not rushed, but rhythmic. And you are inside it, cradled in the quiet, held by old walls that do not forget. Let yourself rest. Let the hush of this place move through you like soft air through high rafters. The night is long, but never lonely. The castle stays with you. The watchful hound, just beyond the entrance to the great hall, where the flagstones, smooth under many footsteps, lies a carving, barely raised. A dog, curled as if sleeping, its head resting on its paws. Many pass by without seeing it. It is small, unobtrusive, tucked into the corner of a pillar's base, where shadow gathers thick. But in the days of old, servants and knights alike would pause there, some to touch its nose for luck, others simply to acknowledge its place. The dog, they said, was modeled after a real hound, who guarded the door long ago, a brindled mastiff, who never barked at guests, but who could sense danger in a man's heartbeat. After the dog passed, the stonemason, who had shared his bread with the beast, etched its likeness into the stone one night by candlelight. The figure became more than memory. It became protection, and to this day, some who walk the castle halls at night swear they hear the soft thump of a tail or feel a presence by their side, steady, loyal. The woolen veil up in the sola, where the noble women once gathered to spin and read and warm their hands, hangs a veil of wool, not a tapestry exactly, but something in between, woven in soft shades of dusk, lavender, moss, and dusky rose. Its threads shimmer faintly when caught by firelight. This veil was not for show. It was for warmth. In the 13th century, these woolen curtains were hung over doorways, layered near windows, used to muffle the bite of winter wind. But this one held more than warmth. They say a woman wove her sorrows into it, a lady of winter, whose husband rode to war and never returned. Each line, a thread of mourning. Each knot, a breath held. Yet the veil is not heavy. No, it sways gently when you pass, almost as if exhaling. Letting go, the fabric carries peace, not the absence of pain, but the quiet presence of time, softening the edges. Run your fingers through the imagined wool. It does not cling. It comforts. The stars beneath the stones, on the castle's tallest tower, far above the chapel spire, and the stables, and the dovecote. There is a narrow room with no roof, only stars above, and old stones beneath. This was once the night keeper's post, a quiet soul who mapped the skies when others slept. He was given ink, a blanket, and his place an observatory of sorts. Though no one called it that then, it was believed that stars influenced dreams, that those born under certain constellations would carry their shapes in the folds of their fate. And so the night keeper watched. He kept a journal, weathered and worn, filled with sketches of Orion and Cassiopeia, notes of where the moon kissed the horizon, where the comets flared bright and brief. But what he wrote most often were dreams, not his own, but those he heard, murmured in sleep, by those who visited. He listened through the stones. He claimed they whispered. Some called him mad. But centuries later, his star maps still align. And sometimes, when a breeze rustles the ivy along the stairway, you might just hear the scratch of his quill. Soft, like wing. The wooden basin tucked behind the servants' hall, almost forgotten, is a shallow basin carved into a cedar log, smoothed by hands and years in water. This was no mere trough. It was for washing feet. In winter months, travelers came to the castle cold and blistered, boots cracked with frost, toes numb with ice. And the steward, stern but kind, insisted that before any guest was fed or clothed, their feet must be warmed. Hot water was ladled in, Rosemary sometimes added, woolen cloths draped nearby, and as each foot was lowered, a sigh would follow. Not from the guests, from the basin. It creaked softly, as if exhaling, gathering the cold and giving warmth in return. That basin still sits beneath a rusted tap, empty now, dry. But some say, if you lean close, you'll smell rosemary. And if you listen even closer, you'll hear water that isn't there. The unread letter. In a drawer in the scribe's study, beneath a false panel, lies a letter sealed in crimson wax. Its paper has yellowed, its edges curled with time, but the seal remains unbroken. No one knows who wrote it, or to whom it was meant to go, but written across the front, in a hand both graceful and firm, are the words. To the one who keeps the stories, it was not uncommon in medieval keeps for scribes to serve as memory keepers, the soul of the house in ink and vellum. And this letter, untouched by time, seems to wait, not for a reader, but for a listener. There's power in what is left unsaid, in the pause between pages, and perhaps, in sleep, you are the one it waits for. Rest now. Let the stories come to you, not in words, but in the hush between them, the hush the castle carries, the hush it gives freely. The candlemaker's hour. There is a room near the kitchens, not much larger than a stable stall, lined with shelves of beeswax and linen thread. Here, long ago, the castle's candlemaker worked quietly after dusk, hands slow, steady, melting golden wax in copper pots, twisting wicks, just so. It was said that the best candles, the ones that burned without smoke, without sputtering, were poured during the still hour, the space between night and dawn when even the mice don't stir. And the candlemaker, an old woman with soft eyes and soot-streaked cheeks, kept no clock. She listened instead to the breath of the castle, to the sound the rafters made when the wind shifted, to the silence just before the first bird called. That was her hour. Some believed, she murmured to the wax. Gentle wishes woven into each pore, candles placed in the nursery, never flickered. Those in the chapel burned with calm flame, as if praying too. And one candle, set in a small lantern and hung above the north stairs, burned for 7 nights and 7 days without end. They said it held a child's dream, and would not extinguish until the child woke smiling. The hearth cat by the kitchen hearth, where ash piled soft like snowfall, and the smell of stew lingered in the stones, curled a cat with fur, the color of smoke. No one knew her name. They simply called her. She was there when the castle's current lord was born, and she remained when the midwife passed. Each generation of cooks swore she'd been there always. But here's the thing. No one ever saw her eat, or drink, or leave, only sleep. And in her sleep, she put a sound so low and rhythmic, it soothed the stiffest joints, lulled colicky infants, even eased the burn of grief in the oldest souls. The castle began to change around her. Doors were reinforced, windows replaced, but Hearthcat remained, always in the same spot, always with that soft, steady hum. When asked, the baker once said, "She keeps the kitchen warm, even when the fire dies, and on bitter nights, when even the soup cooled too fast." Some swore that lying close to her brought dreams of sunlit fields and never-ending spring, a warmth not of heat, but of home. The moss bell up in the belfry, where most never tread, hangs a small bronze bell half covered in moss. It's not used, not struck, and it hasn't rung in over 100 years. And yet, on certain folk-thick mornings, when even the sheep seem quiet and the dew hangs heavy on the garden gate, a sound faint as breath can be heard. Not a chime, not a toll, just a hum, long, low, like a whisper stretched thin across time. The bell was once used not to mark hours or sound alarms, but to summon peace. The abbess of a nearby convent gifted it to the castle in a time of great unrest, saying, "This bell is not for warning, but for calming." She believed the resonance of certain tones could realign the soul, a medieval theory not far from what we now know of sound therapy. And the bell, hung high in quiet solitude, was never touched by man after that. But on cold, windless days, it still sings to itself, or perhaps to the sky. And the castle listens. The dreaming hall, one floor above the library, where dust gathers thick and the air feels pressed between centuries. There's a room most mistake for storage, but if you step inside, you'll see the floor. It's not stone, but wood, covered in velvet rugs faded to pale grays and seafoam green. The windows are shuttered tight, yet there's always a trace of moonlight within. This is the dreaming hall, so-called not for sleep, but for what sleep brings. It was once a resting place for travelers too weary to speak, minstrels who'd lost their voices, widows with tear-damp hands, children whose parents had gone to sea. Here, no one asked names. No one offered comfort aloud, but they were given a blanket, a cup of warmed honey milk, and silence. Silence that wrapped around them, not empty, but full, of the hush of hundreds who came before, of whispered prayers sewn into the cushions, of footsteps that made no sound. Those who entered often left something behind, a lock of hair, a feather, a dried flower tucked beneath the cushion, and in return, they said, They took away rest, not just of body, of soul, a corridor of echoes. There's a hallway just off the southern wing, lined with archways that no longer lead to rooms, just alcoves, quiet little spaces where time curled up and went to sleep. Some say these were the monk cells, used long ago when the castle served as a place of retreat. Others say they were once storerooms, holding parchment and wax and salted fish. But now they hold only echoes, the kind that don't stop. They don't bounce off walls or ring out like shouts. These echoes hum low. They settle into your bones. They remind you of a time you can't quite remember. A candlelit evening, a voice humming softly, the sound of your own heartbeat in a quiet room. In medieval times, it was believed that every corridor had a memory, that stones could store words, especially those spoken in grief, or love, or prayer. They called it the stone song. Walk slow enough through this hall, and you just might hear it. A breath, a sigh, a word said not for you, but somehow meant for you all the same. The bedchamber of woven dreams at the top of a narrow stair, twisting clockwise like a snail's shell, sits the solar, the private bed. The fire here is gentle. It's been tended carefully. Logs stacked just so, embers glowing with patient warmth. Thick curtains hang from a canopy bed. Wool blankets layered beneath quilts, all hand-stitched, each one telling a different story. A fox curled in a thicket, a falcon mid-flight, a lily opening under star. The walls here are padded not just by tapestries, but by silence, a kind of hush that feels sacred, like the room is holding its breath, just for you. Above the hearth, a small shelf holds a few wooden carvings, a deer, a moon, a cradle. Someone placed them there long ago, and though they're simple, they speak loudly of care, of someone taking time to smooth edge, to shape comfort out of nothing but pine and patience. Close your eyes here, and you might hear the hush of fingers brushing linen, the distant hoot of an owl, the castle breathing slowly through its rafters. This room was built for rest, and it remembers how the candlekeeper's loft. Few knew of this room, high in the eastern turret, accessible only by a trapdoor ladder, lived the candle, a woman with calloused palms, a quiet smile, and hands that always smelled faintly of beeswax. She was not a servant, not quite a noble either. She was something else, a keeper of light. Every evening she would walk the castle with a bundle of tapers in her apron, snuffing out the used ones, replacing them, watching the way shadows danced along the hallways when the flame first took. There's something old-world magic about her task. In medieval castles, candles weren't just for sight. They were for time. You measured your hours in inches of wax, in pools of melted silence, in flickering halos that told you how far you were from dawn. Her loft is still there, tiny, warm, filled with rows of molds and wax blocks, linen wicks hanging like soft threads of starlight. She may be long gone, but her last candle still sits on the windowsill, unlit, waiting, just in case someone or something still needs the light. The whisper chapel, tucked into the very belly of the keep, beneath the main chapel, lies a space few visit now, a stone chamber, no bigger than a cottage kitchen, with a single pew and a single lantern in walls, that curved just enough to catch every whisper and hold it still. This was the whisper chapel, meant for prayer, or confession, or weeping alone. Its walls are not heavy. They are listening. There's a hush here that goes deeper than silence, like velvet pressed against your chest, like breath held for someone else. In some traditions, it was believed that prayers spoken in this space rose slower because they were being cradled, carried. Monks would sit here through cold nights, not asking, not speaking, just listening to the walls, to the silence, to the breath of the castle moving like a tide through stone veins. You can still hear it now. If you sit still enough, a faint sound, like someone speaking into the hollow of their own hand, or wind curling beneath an old wooden door. It is not lonely. It is love, wrapped in quiet. The stair that goes nowhere, somewhere between the kitchens and the granary. There's a staircase. It doesn't lead up or down. It just ends. 6 steps, all of them worn by feet. Long gone. No doorway, no arch. Just stone wall at the top. Strange, yes, but not unusual. In many medieval keeps, stairs were built and then changed, rerouted, sealed off when plans shifted, or halls were lost to time. Yet, some say this stair still goes somewhere. That, at certain hours, perhaps between night and dawn. If you place your foot on the first step and breathe slowly, each stair will feel warmer, as if it remembers what it once was meant to be. And sometimes, they say, those who pause at the top with eyes closed will feel wind on their cheek. No drafts, no windows, just wind, as if the breath of the castle is rising up through the stones, guiding you somewhere. Memory cannot follow, but sleep can. Take a moment now. Let your shoulders relax. Let your jaw soften. Let your breath fall into rhythm with the castle. It is with you, breathing, holding, cradling you in stories that don't rush. You are safe, and sleep is near.